I'm going to tell you today, I'm going to tell you something. It's about grief. And it's about the 19 ways that you can help handle your grief. I'd like to tell you about the 19 ways you can handle your own grief. The grief that may be yours. I have another video about the 17 ways that you can deal with other people's grief. I'd like to invite you to grab a comfortable drink and join us here today. The first method for handling your grief that I'd like to address is called grief item. So one would normally select any item that they have a very strong connection to, whether it's personal, romantic, linguistic, and you take that item and you look for a pattern of symmetry on it. So right here, with the beads, you can see they're all going in lines across it this way. If you can follow the angle that they're going on, you can see their perspective, their goals. If you can't do that to yourself, how can you expect to get out of your grief? So just look at your goals, look at your perspective, and treat them as you wish to be treated in certain kinds of ways. I find that when I see my grief pointing towards the future, I really just want to punt. Fuck. When I see these lines that represent my goals and my grief intertwined in one, because I now carry this pain with me, all that I can think about is how much I want to punt my grief into the distant future, and how much I want to punt off of every project. Every 30-meter project, I'm going to punt right onto death spikes. And this is the example of that. This represents all of your failure and all of your grief in one thing. That's why we call it grief item. So to deal with your grief item, there's a strategy called grief punt. Fuck. Oh God, we're getting some. So when you see this item, when you take it, once you've selected it, once you've found the grain, every item has a grain, you just have to look hard enough to find it. It represents your goals and your grief heading towards the same place in the future. There's one convergent point at which all of you have worked for in your life will come together, and then it will fail. And then when you reach that point, there are going to be a lot of emotions going through you, and a strategy that you can use that I developed myself over years of testing. It's called the grief punt. Use it with your grief item, which I've selected this one for you. This is not my real grief item. I could not show that to you. That would violate everything. But so first of all, you're gonna take this item, your grief item, your very personal grief item. You're gonna line up for a beautiful punt. You're gonna envision everything that you've ever loved and everything that you've ever cared about. And then you're just gonna, and when it's gone, you will lose all memory of that event. You will have instantaneous amnesia. That's grief item and grief punt. That's the first two strategies.
We've already gone over the grief punt of the grief item, and this is step 3 out of 13 of dealing with your grief. I like to call it grief rejection. For this, you're going to need a camera or some way to preserve your memories that bring grief to you. I myself have taken lots of pictures of lots of things, which they make me feel really bad, is what I'm getting at. So if you don't have a Polaroid, you can get this camera and kind of print out the pictures or have them framed, or both. Take a close look. Zoom in down here. Look at this. This is the kind of person who this is the kind of person who gets rejected in middle school, high school, and or college. Every day. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna reject him one final time. So through this image taken through this camera, you need to dispose of it. You can do this in any number of ways. It can be destructive, or you can turn it into something else. frankly, it doesn't really matter. You can also mask it. Or some kind of shrine. So you can already see it's starting to, yeah, look here. It's getting distorted by the blades of grass. So you can just keep stacking things in there. Just keep. I'm gonna turn the light on. No. And just keep stacking on the vegetation. See now, here, zoom in, see? You can't even see it anymore. This is a representation of everybody's grief. Made new, into a new form. It benefits this benefits the oxygen layers. It benefits everybody's personal health, everybody's mental health. And if you do it fast enough, you can actually get high. But step 3, rejection of grief. That's pretty much it.
So I have another method that I'd like to cover with you today. This is method 6 out of 11. This one's a personal favorite of mine. It's called lapse into decay. So what you're gonna do, take anything that matters to you personally on a kind of base societal level, like your personal hygiene, and just ignore it. So for my example that I brought for you today, see this stubble? I haven't shaved in about 1 day, and I've really just been letting myself go. I'm also not wearing deodorant right now. Like, it's pretty bad. If you do those kind of things, people's respect for you will just slowly diminish, and it will give you what you want. You really are searching for that feeling that you are inferior and in some way incomplete or imperfect. And if you let your external appearance reflect that, then the mind can only follow. So I'd like to show you some more advanced techniques for that, some that you don't have to wait for it. Let's see. So, cat treats are a valid option. Not many people like them. That's probably because they're for cats. But you could also, okay, here's Gatorade powder, which is good, but it's a little too powdery. It doesn't really stick to anything. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to take a moment to debase myself in front of my grief and worship it, analyze it like an object. But first, we're going to sanitize. You can never be you can never get the bacteria out of you enough. The bacteria are everywhere, and you can't respect them. So what you're going to do, once you're all nice and clean, so you're going to dry off. Take a moment to appreciate your surroundings, because this is the last time you're going to see them in any kind of perspective in which you have self-respect or respect for any of those around you. You're going to take your butter, you're just going to look, survey, see how much is in there. I see a good amount. That's probably 2/3 of a cup. And you're just going to take your hand and just put it in. And then once it's in there, you want to grab a good amount and then just think about your middle school or elementary school crush. Think about how you felt when you thought of being embarrassed in front of them. Just think of that. Hold that in your mind, cherish it, and then just all over until you feel the lowest you've ever felt. Just lower. Keep it going. That was pretty good. So, if you want to use that technique yourself, get yourself some natural Jif Creamy or any kind of really like viscous substance and just. The next strategy I'd like to discuss with you involves something a bit more personal. In this one, we're going to reflect on the source of our grief and how it will affect us for the rest of our lives. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you are dealing with grief. And it's most likely that since you are a person, your grief is related to the loss of a person in your life. I'd like to tell you something about that. It's not real. If you ever lost someone that you cared about, it never happened. It's not something that will affect you ever again. And if you feel something about that, if you feel like that's wrong, then you are actually flawed. You are a damaged person. If you think anything at all about them, if you have thoughts about somebody that can't be in your life anymore, then you're just broken on a fundamental level. And I'm sorry, you should stop watching this video right now. And I'd like you to take some time to really think about what you're doing with your life. And come on, it's not that hard. Just get over it. Just use your ability to override. Use the strategies that I've been talking about. Use the grief punt. Use the grief item. Debase yourself publicly in front of others. Do all of these things, and you will be able to convert yourself to the correct stance about this. Grief is not real. Loss is an illusion. You've never lost anything. As soon as it's gone, it's like you never had it. Why should you feel anything? I know, I sound like a broken record here, but let me tell you one more thing. I used to think grief was real. I had moments when I would think about people that I lost. And I would think about things that I enjoyed doing with them. And so what you need to do to get over that, think of all of the things you enjoyed doing with them. The happiness and even love that you shared with them, and just think about it. Remind yourself every waking moment that you can't do those things anymore. You never will be able to again. And that they were never real. You never had that. It's gone. And there's not much else to say about this. Grief is an illusion, and it's for the weak. Thank you. That was technique number 4. 4 out of 7. And I would like to tell you the name of this technique. If I've already told you, that's fine. It's redundant. But that's an illusion in itself. I'd like to say this method is called finding your truth. And the truth is that you are an incredibly weak and vulnerable human being that doesn't really know what you're doing. And if you think that's not true, I would suggest that you do something horrible to those that you love. So there's one last thing I'd like to share with you. And this one's also pretty deeply personal. It's about a time that people made me feel like I wasn't worth anything, and if you can relate, I feel for you. I am genuinely sorry. So imagine you're with your friends in your freshman year of high school, and you're all hanging out together at the lunch table. Well, I say friends. You think they're your friends, but soon enough you find out they're not. Imagine that everyone you are trying to interact with is so shallow that they treat you differently based on your physical appearance. Imagine that. Imagine something like an innocent seeming game, perhaps to some person, in which you would go around the lunch table and rate every person there on a scale of 1 to 10 for their attractiveness. Imagine you got rated a 2. Imagine how that would affect your outlook on life for the next couple of years, for the next little time from someone who's in a bad place. Has anyone ever done that to you? Anyone ever done something similar? If that's the case, then I'd like to tell you just genuinely, you are incredibly weak, and you should probably really find a different way to look at yourself. You are the worst person that I've ever encountered. Like, I look at you, I see that glow in your eyes, the intelligence, the life, the desire to improve, and I just know that's not going to get you anywhere. It's going to get you hurt. The only way you can safely go through life, you need to be completely shut off. You need to be distant from everyone that you love. You need to not allow yourself to feel anything. If you do, people are just going to hurt you. You need to take the time to build walls that nothing can get through. Nothing at all. So you need to take all those things that people said to you and use that. Anything that it makes you feel. Happiness, joy, gratitude,
for them to showing you who you really are, what your value as a person really is, and construct that into a kind of barrier, one that disconnects your emotions and your thoughts. And that way, you'll be able to effectively manipulate those around you into doing your bidding. And is that not the purpose of life, to get others to do what you want? If you can do that, then you will be happy. If you have amassed power over others in a way that allows you to be superior and dominant in every way, and to detach yourself from the basest of human instincts such as emotion, then that's really where our society is heading. If you can do that, you're ahead of the curve, and I would like to say that you are not weak. You are a strong individual who is doing the right thing, and I wish I could come into contact with more of you so you could really show me the right way of doing things, because I myself still struggle with emotion. I feel it every day, and I let it control me, and I see people just plowing straight ahead regardless of the fear, the pain, and the trauma that they cause to other people. And I respect them. I see what they're doing. They're doing whatever they want. They don't really give a fuck about anyone else. And that is the ultimate goal. That is what I really want to get down to today. You have to be selfish. Just be the most selfish, obscenely selfish person you can imagine. And just take that to another level. Take it to the point when you view the actual life of another as something that is less valuable than your own. I want you to take every thought of every other person you've had in your life and just condense it into one small point and say, this is less than a pinprick on the horizon. All that I care about, anything that I've ever really cared about, it's my ambition. It's my lofty ambition to conquer everything that has made me, and to destroy everyone else. I want to remove love and happiness. I want to take anything that makes other people happy and just remove it and force them to live in a constant state of knowing that it's wrong. I want them to use those grief techniques. I want them to form a grief item. I want them to punt it. And I want to watch what happens when it comes back down. That's not a part that I told you about. That grief item, you punt it. It's going somewhere. Where? You don't know, because you listened to me, you piece of shit. So anyway, when that grief item comes back down, it's gonna hit you as a way of finding you, no matter where you kick it, no matter how far, how long, how wide. The more powerful, the farther it'll go. That makes sense, right? Well, that just means it's gonna come back later. It's gonna come back at a different time, hit you when you least expect it. So let's say you recently lost a friend in any kind of way. We're not talking about life, death, relationship, it doesn't matter. If you lose someone, they're gone, remember? That's the true illusion of grief. If you lose somebody, they never existed. And that's really the important part to keep in mind. But anyways, so if the emotions regarding the illusory disappearance of that person come back, if you have the punt returned to you, if it hits you, which it will, it's going to hit you in the back of the head when you least expect it. So when you start to return to a normal feeling of life, when you've lost sight of the vaunting ambition and the horrible, horrible drive to crush the love and joy out of everyone around you, you might start to feel better. You might start to feel like, oh wait, maybe I've rediscovered the purpose of existing, but you really haven't. There is only one, and it's to cause pain. Cause pain, spread fear, anything along that line. And if that punt doesn't bring you back, then you are even weaker than I imagined. And that's how I'd like to conclude today's video by saying, you are incredibly weak. You are the weakest, least disciplined, most likely to fail person that I have ever come into contact with. And I would like to tell you that no matter how many times, no matter how hard you try, you will always fail. And if you think none of that is true, then I'm sorry. It's just going to take you longer to realize your true place in the world. And that place is, I'm going to be honest with you, it's in the ground. 6 feet under. And if you don't agree with me, please come to me. I have very effective ways of removing all of your skin. And my favorite method of that is using this here. Carmex. Classic lip balm, medicated. Actually, you know what? There's not enough volume for this, so we're gonna take our Men's Degree 48-hour antiperspirant cool rush, and we're gonna use that technique once more. We're gonna do it again. We're gonna feel good about ourselves. And that is the worst possible way you can ever imagine feeling. So you're gonna remove any and all clothing that you have on. For the purpose of this video, of course. You're gonna take deodorant. I'm sorry, that was a ghost. That was a waking illusion of someone that I believe that I've lost in the past, but I can't let that control me now. Alright, she's gone. Alright. So you're gonna take the deodorant. You're gonna make sure you twist it out as far as it will go. This takes a while, sorry, I haven't used this one before. Okay. You're gonna go all the way. And once it has this kind of wobble, shows the instability, like your emotional instability, you're just gonna start applying deodorant in the best way that you can imagine. So I quest to my imagination for guidance, and it will deliver, so.